Here we'll introduce the concept of cross products. For this question, imagine you work in a nursing home and there's one registered nurse for every 5 patients. If the nursing home has 50 patients total, how many nurses does the nursing home need? We'll start out by trying to draw a picture. In green, I will draw my one registered nurse, and then in white, I will draw the 5 patients that go with it. First, notice that we're going for 50 patients. Now, let's not bother drawing all of them, but I'll make a note that we need 50 patients. Then we ask ourselves, what do we have to do to start from 5 and go to 50? In order to go from 5 to 50, we would have to multiply by 10, so I'm going to put a times 10 symbol there. Now, imagine if we did the same thing to our nurses. Let's also place a times 10 symbol here. This means that our number of nurses would be 1 times 10. If we take 1 times 10, we will of course get 10. This means, based on our picture, we would need to have 10 nurses to accommodate 50 patients. Now I'll show you an algebra technique that we can use to replicate that outcome. The technique I'll show you is called a cross product. We'll use a cross product anytime we need to compare 2 ratios. You may notice that in the first line of this question, we were given a ratio, 1 registered nurse for every 5 patients. So we'll write 1:5, we'll write nurses under the 1 and patients under the 5. Then in the second line, we're given 50 patients, so we'll write another ratio. We'll put 50 in the patient slot, and then we'll say that our number of nurses is unknown because the question asks specifically how many nurses. When you see the words how many in a word problem, that denotes where your unknown is. Since our nurses are unknown, we'll place an X on the left side of the second colon. So we'll have 1 nurse to 5 patients and then X nurses to 50 patients. Based on this, we can make our cross product. When we write our cross product, we're going to write 2 fractions. In between those 2 fractions, we'll put an equal sign. And whatever word is on the left will go to the top of those fractions. Since I wrote nurses first, we'll put nurses on top, followed by patients on the bottom because that's on the right side. Let's try this now. We'll draw 2 division bars with an equal sign between. The 1:5 ratio we'll write as our first fraction. Nurses on the top, that's 1. Patients on the bottom, that's 5. Then for our other ratio, we'll have X to 50. X being the nurses, that will go on the top, and then we'll place 50 on the bottom. So now we have an equation that has 2 fractions. I'll show you how to operate this cross product on the next page. Here's the algebra technique that we'll use. When you have a fraction on the left and the right, you will do what's called a cross product. When we do a cross product, we'll take the number on top on the left and multiply it by the bottom number on the right. We'll draw this little blue line to connect them and show that we're going to put 1 times 50 on the left side now. Then we'll place an equal sign, and then I'll draw a circle around the 5 and the X, that's the bottom on the left and the top on the right, and now multiply those together on the other side of the equals. This means that our blue items will go to the left, our yellow items will go to the right. So on the left I have 1 times 50, and on the right I have 5 times X. Bear in mind, of course, that 50 times 1 will still give us 50. If we were multiplying by anything other than 1, we would multiply those at this time. On the right, we now have 5x because a number sandwiched next to a letter is treated like multiplication. Now we're going to try to get x by itself and solve. To get that x by itself, we'll divide on both sides by the number next to x. That's the 5. And so on the right, I will place a division by 5, and on the left, I will also place a division by 5. If we take 5 divided by itself, any number divided by itself cancels out and becomes 1. This will leave a 1x on the right, and if you like, you can leave out the 1. On the left, I have 50 divided by 5, but 50 divided by 5 will give me 10. Therefore, I have x equals 10, which is the same answer I got when I drew the pictures. This means I would need 10 nurses. If you have a number that you can't easily compute, it's better to use cross products. We'll do an example of that now. We'll do a variation where instead of our original numbers, we now have 3 registered nurses for every 18 patients. And now my nursing home has 90 patients, and we are asked how many nurses does the nursing home need? Now notice in line 1, we are still comparing nurses to patients. I've boxed those in, and we'll write that we have a ratio of 3 nurses to 18 patients, or 3:18. We'll label that on the left we have nurses, and the 18 is our patients. In line 2 of the question, we've changed the number of patients to 90. We'll write that after the colon as my second ratio. And then I'm asked how many nurses. And that means my number of nurses that goes with that 90 is not known. I have to make sure to place that x in the nurse's position, not in the patient's position, because the question specifically says how many nurses. Now I can write my cross product. I can place my nurses on the top and my patients on the bottom. Once again, for my cross product, I'll write 2 fractions. On the top, I will place my first amount of nurses, that's 3. On the bottom, my first amount of patients, that's 18. Then on my fraction on the right, on top, I don't know the number of nurses that go with this, but I do know I must have 90 patients. Therefore, when I do my multiplication, I will start by multiplying the top of the first fraction, that's 3, times 90, the bottom of the other fraction, and write 3 times 90. Then I'll write equals, and then I'll look to my other numbers. I'll have 18, that's the bottom of the first fraction, times the x, that's the top of the other fraction. So 3 times 90 equals 18 times x. We can go to a calculator and take 3 times 90 now. I enter my 3, then press the multiplication symbol, and then enter 90, and press enter. This gives me 270. I'll say this equals 18x. Again, remembering that 18 times x can be written as just the 18 next to x. Now I can divide on both sides by the number next to x. That's 18. I'll place that division by 18 on both sides of the equation, and remember that if I take 18 divided by itself, that will cancel out and become 1. I'll now write the x by itself on the right, and if you want to write the invisible 1, that's okay. But on my left, I have 270 divided by 18, and I'll go to the calculator for that as well. With my 270 still in the calculator, I press divide, and then I press 18. When I press equals, I'll end up with 15. That means in this particular hospital, I will have 15 nurses to go with 90 patients. So remember, if you're comparing 2 different ratios in a word problem, using a cross product would be a good move.